My name is Jackson, and I am a journalist. For the past few years, I've been working on topics that didn't really interest me, but that all changed when I came across one of the scariest stories of my life. This story began in a small town in Western Virginia, where the first mysterious disappearance occurred. I was sitting in my office when I got a call from the local sheriff. He talked about a series of disappearances that had no explanation. The sheriff was desperate because even experienced detectives couldn't find any leads. I decided that this might be a big chance for me and immediately left for Virginia. When I arrived in the city, I was immediately struck by an atmosphere of fear. People were afraid to go outside after sunset. I met with the sheriff and got access to the case files. The first to disappear was a young girl named Megan. She was coming home from work but never made it. Her car was found abandoned on the side of the road, but there was no sign of a struggle or blood. This seemed very strange because Megan was strong and always carried pepper spray with her. The next day, I decided to talk to Megan's family. Her mother, Susan, was devastated but agreed to talk to me. She said that Megan had been feeling like she was being watched lately. She even mentioned several times about a strange man who often appeared near her work. This was an important clue to the investigation. I decided to find this man and find out what he knows. Local residents told me about a homeless man named Tom who often wandered by Megan's work. I found him under the bridge and offered him food in exchange for information. Tom was frightened but began to tell. He saw Megan talking to the stranger several times. That man was always dressed in dark clothes and wore a hat that shaded his face. Tom said he last saw them together the night Megan disappeared. A stranger gave her a lift in his van. This was an important clue, and I decided to find this van. I contacted the sheriff with this information, and we began looking for witnesses who might have seen this van. A few days later, we found a woman who remembered seeing such a van on an abandoned farm outside of town. The sheriff and I decided to go there. When we arrived at the farm, the place looked abandoned and neglected. We started exploring the area and found an old barn. It was dark inside, but we saw what looked like blood on the floor. The sheriff took samples for analysis, and I continued to inspect the barn. My heart beat faster when I opened one of the closets and found an old backpack. Inside were Megan's personal belongings. It confirmed our worst fears. I realized that we had stumbled upon the lair of a maniac. We immediately returned to the police station to organize a search operation. The sheriff ordered to comb the entire area around the farm. That night was tense, because everyone understood that the maniac was somewhere nearby. In the morning, we got the results of the blood test. It was Megan's blood. Now there was no doubt that we were dealing with a serial killer. I started digging deeper and found some old newspaper articles about other disappearances in the area. All the cases had one thing in common. The missing were young women, and they all disappeared not far from the road. I realized that we are dealing with a real maniac who has been active for many years. I decided to talk to other families of the missing to find even more information. They all told similar stories. Their daughters or sisters felt they were being watched before they disappeared. It gave me the impression that a maniac was carefully planning his attacks. My article began to gain momentum, and other journalists also took an interest in the case, but it attracted the attention of not only journalists, but also the killer himself. I started receiving threats and warnings to leave the case. One evening, when I was walking back to the hotel, I thought I was being followed. I quickened my pace, trying to look calm. In the hotel room, I found an envelope under the door. It had a photo of Megan with the caption, "You're next." It was a clear signal that the maniac knew about me. I realized that I could no longer ignore the danger. It was necessary to decide whether to continue the investigation, risking one's own life, or to surrender. I decided to continue despite the risks. I contacted the police for protection, but this did not stop the maniac. One day, returning to my room, I noticed that the door was slightly ajar. Inside, the room was turned upside down, and on the wall was written in blood, "Leave this business before it's too late." The sheriff advised me to leave town temporarily, but I couldn't give up that easily. I knew we were on the right track and that our persistence could save future victims. I decided to meet with some local detectives who were working on old disappearances in hopes of finding new leads. Detective Michaels, who was now retired, agreed to speak with me. He talked about several unsolved cases that had similar features. Michaels believed that the killer might have been a local resident who knew the area well and could disappear without a trace. He also suspected that the killer was careful and chose victims who often traveled the same routes. I spent several days going through old police reports and newspaper articles. One of them mentioned a stranger who often appeared near the places of disappearances. Everyone described him as a middle-aged man with dark hair and wearing a hat. This description matched what Tom had seen. I realized that this man could be the key to the solution. I decided to find him at any cost. I went back to the abandoned farm where we found Megan's things. There I noticed a few more tracks that we had missed on our first look. In one of the rooms were several old photographs of young women. I assumed they might have been previous victims. I took pictures and went back to the sheriff. We have decided to share these photos through the media in the hope that someone will recognize the women and be able to give us more information. A few days after posting the photos, I received a call from a woman named Linda. She claimed she recognized one of the women in the photo as her sister Emily, who had disappeared 10 years earlier. Linda said that Emily also mentioned a strange man following her. This information confirmed our suspicions that the maniac had been active for a long time. Linda agreed to meet with me and provide more details. When I met Linda, she brought some of Emily's old things. Among them was a diary in which Emily recorded her observations about the stranger. She described him as very cautious, but once he even tried to talk to her. The diary contained details that helped us understand how the maniac operated. Emily wrote that the stranger always appeared suddenly and disappeared without a trace, but one day she noticed that he was following her in his van. I went back to the sheriff with this information. We decided to monitor possible places where this man could appear. We also decided to turn to the FBI for help as the case was gaining momentum and becoming dangerous. An FBI agent named Kate took the case and took over the coordination of the investigation. She had a lot of experience in such cases and immediately developed a plan of action. Kate organized a team to monitor all the places where the victims were found. We also started reviewing all CCTV footage in the area. It was difficult, but eventually we came across a picture of a van that matched Tom's description. It was a big breakthrough. Now we had a specific goal. We began to track the movements of this van and found it in one of the small towns nearby. When we arrived in this town, it turned out that the van belonged to a man named John. He lived on a remote farm and had a reputation as a recluse. We decided to proceed carefully so as not to frighten him. Kate and I pretended to be buyers looking for an old farm to buy. John received us on his territory and behaved very suspiciously. He did not allow us to see some parts of the farm and was constantly nervous. Kate pretended that she wanted to talk to him privately about the terms of the purchase, while I began to survey the area. I found a few suspicious things that made me think we were on the right track. Under one of the old barns, I discovered a disguised entrance to the basement. I didn't get a chance to examine it thoroughly, so I took a picture of the place and returned to Kate. We decided we needed to get a search warrant to act legally. The next day, we returned with a warrant and a team of special forces. John tried to run away, but we caught him. In the basement, we found evidence that confirmed our worst fears. The basement was set up as a real prison with torture chambers. Photos of the victims hung on the walls, including Megan and Emily. It was a terrible and shocking discovery. John was arrested and taken to the police station. He refused to testify, but the evidence was so clear that his indictment was inevitable. After long interrogations, he confessed to the murders and explained his motives. He considered himself a cleanser who rids the world of sinful women. It was a sick ideology that forced him to act ruthlessly and cold-bloodedly. The investigation continued, and we found more victims who were buried on his farm. Each discovery became more and more terrifying, and I began to feel that this investigation would leave a deep mark on my soul. I wrote a series of articles about this case, which caused a wide resonance in society. People were shocked that such a monster could live among them for so many years. After John's arrest, I decided to take a break and rest. But I understood that this case would not leave me just like that. Nightmares about those terrible discoveries began to haunt me every night. Kate suggested I talk to a psychologist, but I declined. I thought I could handle it on my own. But over time, I realized that this experience changed me forever. I decided to write a book about this investigation to share my story and perhaps help others understand that such evil can lurk in even the most peaceful places. The book became a bestseller, and I received a lot of positive feedback. But even the success of the book could not completely displace those terrible memories. I started looking for new investigations to distract myself, but every time I came across something similar, my hands shook with fear. My life changed, and I could no longer go back to what it was before. But I realized that my experience can help others. I started working with organizations that help victims of violence and disappearances. It gave me a new meaning in life. I felt like I could do something useful and help others avoid the horrible things that happened to Megan and John's other victims. After writing the book and participating in various events, I felt that my work was not yet complete. I continued to cooperate with the police and assist in investigations of similar cases. But deep down, I knew that the story of John and his sacrifices would stay with me forever. However, when I met Kate at one of the events, she told me that there were new leads in John's case. New victims have been found who may have been his first murders. This news made me dive back into the investigation. Kate and I went to the place where the new remains were found. It was another old farm, but this time it belonged to a different person. It turns out that John may have had an accomplice or mentor who helped him or even taught him. This discovery was a new twist in the case. We decided to track down the owner of this farm and find out more about his connection to John. The owner of the farm turned out to be a man named Harry. He was much older than John and lived alone. We decided to meet him under the pretext of investigating other disappearances in the area. Harry was very reserved and reluctant to answer our questions, but his nervousness and evasive answers only strengthened our suspicions. We obtained a warrant to search his farm and found many items that indicated his involvement in crime. In the basement were found old photos, records, and even instruments used for torture. Harry admitted that he and John bonded over their shared hatred of women. It turned out that Harry was the real mastermind, and John was just following his orders. This discovery was shocking. Harry thought of himself as a teacher who taught John all his sciences. He said that they met many years ago, and since then started planning their crimes together. Harry also admitted that he had killed many women before meeting John. His coolness and lack of remorse was impressive. The investigation continued, and we found more of Harry's victims. Each new discovery only confirmed his cruelty and sick ideology. He believed that he was performing some divine mission to cleanse the world of sinful women. Harry was arrested and charged with multiple murders. His trial has become one of the most high-profile cases in recent years. During the trial, many women who survived his attacks testified. Their stories were terrifying and shocked everyone present. Harry showed no signs of remorse and even spoke proudly of his achievements. This only strengthened our determination to bring him to a just punishment. Harry was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without parole. After the trial was over, I felt relieved but also empty. Investigating this case took a lot of my strength and energy, but it also gave me a sense of accomplishment. I decided to continue my work helping victims of violence and disappearances. My life would never be the same again, but I knew I could use my experience to benefit others. Kate and I became close friends and went on to work together on other things. We realized that our work is important and can save many lives. We also started running educational programs to help people recognize danger signs and protect themselves. My experience has taught me that evil can lurk in even the most unexpected places, and that we must be prepared for anything. But I also learned that strength and determination can overcome even the most terrifying challenges. Life after solving the John and Harry case was difficult, but I knew I had done everything I could to help the victims and prevent further crimes. My work continued, and I felt that I could make the world a little bit safer. Despite all the difficulties, I knew that I would never give up and continue to fight for justice. This story will forever remain in my memory as a reminder of how important it is to be vigilant and decisive in the fight against evil. When Harry's trial was over, I was relieved, but the case left its mark, a reminder of how cruel the world can be. I returned home, trying to find peace and gather my thoughts. But one day, when I was browsing the news, I came across an article about more murders. The killer acted with the same brutality and method as John and Harry. My anxiety grew and I immediately contacted Kate. Kate shared with me new information. The murders had taken place in another state, and the police suspected that a new follower of Harry had appeared. We decided to go to the location immediately to help with the investigation. Arriving at the scene, we met with local detectives who were already working on the case. They were grateful for our help because our experience could be decisive in finding the killer. We began by analyzing the crime scene and the collected evidence. All signs pointed to the new assassin being aware of Harry and John's methods. This meant that he was either directly connected to them or had studied their crimes thoroughly. We decided to check with former acquaintances of Harry and John, as well as people who may have had access to their records and materials. The investigation led us to the trail of a young man named Trevor. He was a regular on dark internet forums and often discussed John and Harry's methods with other users. We learned that he repeatedly expressed his admiration for their achievements. We decided to check his background and found out that he was known for his aggressive behavior and problems with the law. This made him the prime suspect. After much surveillance on Trevor, we obtained enough evidence to arrest him. During the search of his house, we found diaries and notes in which he detailed his plans and methods. Trevor confessed to the murders and said that he considered himself a continuation of the case of John and Harry. He saw them as his mentors and wanted to surpass their achievements. I had mixed feelings after Trevor's arrest. On the one hand, we stopped another dangerous killer. On the other hand, I understood that cruelty and hatred will never completely disappear. But each victory over evil gave hope and strength to move on. We returned home knowing that we had taken another step towards justice. Our actions helped save lives and prevent new tragedies. After completing this matter, I decided to rest a little and spend time with my family. These events showed me how important the support and love of loved ones are. My wife and children became a reliable rear for me, which helped me overcome all difficulties. I also realized that I had to continue my work, but with a greater emphasis on prevention and education. Kate and I started holding seminars and trainings for law enforcement and social workers to help them recognize danger signs and act ahead of time. Our efforts paid off, and we saw that more and more people began to pay attention to potential threats and react to them in time. We have also helped victims of violence and disappearances by providing them with support and resources for recovery. This work was difficult but extremely important. We felt that we were making the world a little bit safer and helping people to live without fear. One day, when Kate and I were returning from another seminar, she shared with me her thoughts on the importance of not giving up and continuing to fight. Her words inspired me and reminded me why we chose this path. Our efforts were not in vain. Every life saved, every crime prevented were our greatest rewards. We knew there was still a lot of work ahead, but we were ready for it. Ultimately, my story was a reminder that evil can be defeated if you don't give up and fight to the end. Kate and I continued to work together, helping others and making the world a safer place. Our research and investigations have shown that even the most brutal killers can be stopped if decisive and coordinated action is taken. And although our work was difficult and often dangerous, we knew it was worth every effort. I kept the memory of all the victims and tried to do everything possible so that their tragedies were not in vain. We continued to fight for justice and help those who needed our support. And I knew that our common task, to make the world a better and safer place for everyone, will continue as long as we have the strength and determination.